I was born in New Jersey, and it was in 1924.
And I lived with my aunt. Well, she was my grandma, and my mother and my father. We were up on the third floor of an apartment, and we had lots of friends that were down the hall. As a matter of fact, the first time I ever saw television was from a friend down the hall when I was 8 years old. So that was really a very big thing in those days. My grandmother stayed with us because my mother was quite ill. She wasn't really badly ill, but she had a heart condition because she had had scarlet fever when she was a young child, and it left her heart damaged. And so she had to, continue to have a heart condition. And every once in a while, she would have a little heart attack. And I knew that as I was growing up. My mother passed away when I was 12 years old, and I wasn't surprised, but I was so frightened because I didn't really know as if my dad and I felt, and he was working a lot of times at night, and I just didn't really know what was happening. And so Aunt Min came down right away and Uncle Jim right away, and they spoke to my father, and my father said it'd be nice if she could go back with you and live with you because I can't take care of her. It wouldn't be right for me to have a 12-year-old, and sometimes I work at night, and he said I just can't take care of her. So my aunt and uncle were delighted because they didn't have any children of their own, and my aunt, they wanted children, so it was lovely. So I went to live with them, and I had to leave my school and everything, which I felt sad about because I was very happy with my school. My teacher loved me, and I won a prize in junior high school for being the best student in the class. So I think I still have it someplace. My uncle was James Henry Windsor, he was British, and they were originally from London. So and he was a really handsome man. He was in the Spanish-American War. He was a captain when he came out. My uncle died when I was 16, so I only really knew him from 12 to 16. He was the best. He was the most important one in my life. I really felt that he was the one that made me feel like I was could be somebody if I wanted to be. That he keeps saying everybody's unique. He said you're a special person. You're unique and you're special, and you just have to work at whatever you want, and you'll do well. You just have to be true to yourself always. True to your friends. And so I just always felt that was important to me. Anyway, my uncle had decided that I had to go to college, and nobody in our family had gone to college, and he decided that was important, that I had to go to college. So he put aside money before he passed away, so my aunt could pay for the college, but couldn't pay for me to stay at the college. So I lived at home, and I commuted with a trolley car. I had a trolley car, because this is a long time ago. And I went, first, when they assigned me to someone that was going to be my guidance person in college, it was George Washington University, and he was a chemistry professor, and he kept pushing chemistry on me. So I started majoring in chemistry, but then I realized I took a course. It was called a survey in physics and mathematics or something like that. I loved it. I had never been exposed to physics and mathematics at that level, and mathematics was my favorite subject in school all the way through. And so I was just enamored by it and started taking physics courses and mathematics courses. And I had to take chemistry because I had committed to it. And he said that I would get my degree faster if I stayed with the chemistry. So I stayed with the chemistry because I graduated in 3.5 years. And I still wanted to start with more, so I started taking more mathematics when I got out of there. And so when I graduated from college, and I was very popular in college. All the boys didn't have to go to war because the war was on. This is World War II, and it was just really, really fun. I had a good time. My first semester, I learned to play bridge. I thought it was such a great game that I would skip classes and and I didn't do very well at first. My uncle said to me, "You can't do that. You just can't do that. If you want to get ahead in the world, you can't do. So you have to do your homework and you can't skip classes." So I took heed and I never did it again. And my professor that was teaching me, he was working for the government, but he was teaching at night, and I was taking a mathematics course with him. But he suggested that if I was interested in a job, that I would apply to the government, and that he would put my name in. I don't know. In those days, you see, this was still during the war, and everything was so different. Everybody had so much more right to say things. He said, "I'd get you in my division."
Mm-hmm.
So I said that would be great. And so I worked in his division, and it was a division that was interested in doing some work with the atomic bomb. The first one, it wasn't the atomic bomb, but it was the beginning of the atomic bombs. The bikini test. It was the first one when they tested a little thing to see. And what we did, so they sent us to Woods Hole. And so I learned all kinds of things about all the instruments and whatnot, so I had a wonderful time there. And we did a nice job down at the Woods Hole. And so we came back, and so the guys were all getting ready to go to Bikini for the things, and I couldn't go because they wouldn't take a woman on the boat, or whatever it was, they wouldn't take us. So I didn't go. But Bert went, and then his boss went too. So they all went, and they took. Well, they wrote my name on one of the things that they had, so it's acted as if I was there. Mm-hmm. And then when they came back, they gave me a thing that had all the things on it, and they gave me 2 beautiful clocks that were sent over that weren't used. Mm-hmm. So I had these beautiful clocks. So these really beautiful clocks, and we had them. My son has one right now. I gave it to him. And I think somebody has the other one. I don't remember who, but anyway, they were beautiful. I kept them for a long while. But anyway, that was all a really good experience. And then one of these times when we had this delicatessen dinner, this man came back from the wars. He had been in the war for 4 years, and he was in a captain's uniform. And when he came in, I took a look at him. He was kind of a good-looking guy. Well, anyway, he said that, we talked a little bit. He was sort of shy. But at the end of the little luncheon, he asked me if I'd like to take a walk out in the snow, because there was a new snowstorm. And for Washington, D.C. to have a snowstorm was absolutely unusual. That had a snow that lasted on the ground. So we went out there for a little walk, and he told me his name. His name was Martin Apkowitz, and I've never heard anything about him. He said he came from Massachusetts, and that he was, he lived way up in Revere Beach, which I didn't know anything about either. And so we talked, and that was very friendly, but nothing seriously happened, except that when he wanted to have a ride back to work each time, he found that Mrs. Saunders was a good person to meet, so he would meet Mrs. Saunders to go back to work. Mm-hmm. And I used to meet Mr. Saunders too. Mr. Saunders used to have a little sort of connection. He would pick Martin up, and then another man up, and then he would pick Marty up, and he would put him in the back seat. Mm-hmm. And he put me in the back seat. So Martin and Davette talked to each other for a half an hour going and a half an hour coming back, and finally Martin said, "Would you like to read the Sunday paper in Red Rock Creek Park this Sunday?" And I thought, well, that was a lovely thing to do. So we did it. Rock Creek Park was lovely, and it had a creek, and so we used to do that a lot. And we became really, really good friends. Really good friends. I mean, it was real good friends before we became, a boy and girlfriend. He was very smart. It's really smarter than some of the other guys in my thing. And when we were taking some courses, the University of Maryland was giving some courses right where we were working, and everybody was taking the physics courses. And so he had already taken them at MIT, and so he knew the answers to all these questions. And so if we had homework, I sometimes got stuck, and he would come down to help me, and then I would help the other guys. I was actually real smart. He was a good dancer. So in those days, you go to some place and have some supper, and then they have little dances, and it was just very pleasant. Music would sometimes be live music. It was just like that. It was a popular thing to do.
And we were just like really, really good friends. And we used to go to the park and read the Sunday paper, and it was just about that time that we were getting to be really, really close friends, and really thinking about something in the future. And he decided to go back to Harvard and get another degree, get his PhD. And so I said to him, I guess that's going to be the end of our friendship. He said, no. He said, not really. He said, why don't you go with me? And I said, well, I don't think my aunt would allow me to go with you just like that. He said, well, what about if we get married? So it wasn't a really exciting proposal, but it meant an awful lot to me, and I still remember it. And of course, I thought about it. I told him, do you really think that would be a good idea? And he said, I think it would be an excellent idea. So I said, I think so too. That was it. And I did go. You know, and was really surprised, and she was happy that I was married. We got married in New York, and we only invited 50 people because I wanted it to be very special. And my aunt was paying for the wedding, and I knew that where we had it was very expensive. And Marty and I were just so much in love. We danced, and we had such a happy time.
With Grandpa, we had to go on a honeymoon. So Grandpa said, we can go wherever you want to go. So the one place I wanted to go to was Cuba. Nobody was going to Cuba. It was, it was open if you wanted to go, but nobody was going to Cuba. They weren't choosing to go. We had a great time. We were there. That place, the sand was like white, and the water was all blue because it would reflect the sky. And we were the only one on the beach. The other people that were there in the hotel didn't go to the beach. I mean, we just really owned the place. We loved it. It was just wonderful. I just can't tell you how marvelous it was. It was, that was really what our honeymoon was like. And so when we came home, Marty went back to that was fine. He decided then after we got home that he would like to get his PhD. He was going to come up to Massachusetts to get it. He was accepted to Harvard. And so we came up. We lived for the first year with his mother. And that was an experience. Because she's kept kosher, and I never had been in a kosher environment. My aunt never kept kosher, neither did my mother, and I didn't really know anything about it, frankly. And in the beginning, I sort of got mixed up and got things a little bit in the wrong place. But she was very forgiving, and she was very nice. She was a really, really great person, and just was so grateful that her boy had married me. She just really liked me. And that was really nice because I liked her too. I thought I had tremendous admiration for her. She had 4 boys, and one girl. Unfortunately, the girl died when she got cancer. She got melanoma, and it wasn't diagnosed, and she passed away. This is a long time ago. It was sad because the oldest one of the family, my husband's brother, was a doctor, and he just was brokenhearted that he couldn't help his sister, but she died. He didn't realize how serious melanoma was at that time. It was just brand new when it was diagnosed. So anyway, he became a doctor. The second boy became a lawyer, and then my husband became a professor. Eventually, he became a professor at MIT. And then Stan was the other one. He was an engineer. And so he's the one that went into business. So he's a businessman. And so the family did very well. And my mother-in-law was very proud of them. She used to have white shirts on all of them. You could always tell, she said, the Apkowitz boys, because they all wore white shirts. And she was very, very proud of them. She always told me that, I used to go down to shop in a bakery store, and she said, now you tell them you're an Apkowitz, because she said they may cheat you because you're a stranger. Just tell them you're an Apkowitz. And I have to go in there and say, I'm Mrs. Apkowitz, the daughter-in-law. I felt sort of embarrassing, big person like me, that I had to make excuses. I couldn't buy bread without giving some reason why I should be there. We had a lot of fun. Stan was there, lived there, and Marty and I. We had the room in the front for 1 year, and then we decided we had to be on our own. So then we got a place in Boston that we had. It was the first time that we were really on our own, and that was another experience, but I don't want to go into that one. That was another big experience because it was not in the best neighborhood in Boston, and we had a lot of other experiences there, but anyway, it's still fun, and we managed, and we came we decided we were going to try skiing, so we rented some skis, and we got some stuff from Goodwill, got ourselves all equipped, and we went on our first skiing thing. We bought a car. That we bought in Washington, and that was a mistake because it didn't have any heater in it. So when we got up to Massachusetts, we had a big Pontiac. We got up to Massachusetts and we were freezing the first winter we were here, and Marty used to drive with a blanket over his legs, and finally we got some kind of a heater there, which wasn't very effective. It was okay for me, but not for him. But we managed it. It worked okay. And so we went skiing. And so on our first time that we went skiing, we went to Jaffrey Mountain, which was not so far away. It was about maybe 2 hours away. And so it wasn't a big ski thing. It had these rope toes. Anyway, Marty fell and hurt his ankle, couldn't drive. And I had just learned to drive, and it was a terrible day. It had rained and then froze over, and it's really bad driving kind of thing. So I started driving home, and the car skidded. It went all the way around, and then hit the guardrail in the opposite direction. I was facing the opposite direction. Yeah. Fortunately, there was no traffic. Yeah. It was so crazy, nobody would be out in that crazy weather. So we stopped afterwards. I got control of the car, but of course it got hurt, but only the front part of it, or the side of it, some part of it. But I drove it home. We stopped at this place because we had to get something to eat and to drink. When I was a nervous wreck, so was he. And he couldn't do anything, and I had to keep driving. It was awful, the whole situation. We had to get home. So there was 3 or 4 people. Every single one of them had an accident. Yeah. Every one of them had the same thing happen to them. And that was another big experience. And there was a lot of these things happened. All these things that I remember now. But they were all good ones. Nothing bad happened. It was an experience, and we just never forget it because it was kind of an unusual kind of thing for us to happen. And we continued to ski, and that was still lots of fun. And that was one of the nice things we did in the wintertime. And every summer, we'd come down to Washington, and we both got our job back in the government. That was crazy. I know I can't understand why it would work that way. But I'd work back in where I was, and he would work from here for 2 months during the summer, and the government took us back, and we got paid the same thing. I don't know. I don't think this happens anymore.
And then we moved to Watertown, and then we started having children. Jan was born in Watertown, and Mark was born in Watertown, and Susie also came along much later when we lived in Watertown. And so we bought a house then in Peacock Farms, and it was only $19,000 for the house. I mean, you can imagine that. I mean, I sold it for $700,000, but it was going to cost me $19,000 when we bought it.
At that point, I had Susie and Mark and Chad, and then we had Aunt Min, and we had Bruce, and we had a dog, and it was the happiest time of my life. And Jan was shy, for almost a week. She cried in school. She just wanted to be home. She didn't want to go to school. She had been at the Harvard preschool nursery, and she loved it. She had learned. She was reading, and as I was telling you, she was reading labels off the cans in the supermarket. When I realized that she knew her alphabet, and she was sounding out the words, and I couldn't get over it. There were some other people that were there with us, and they couldn't get over it. And it turned out that she was learning to read without her knowing it. And so she was, and they used to talk to me about it and say it's really unusual. They never had a kid quite like that. So it was really something special.
I know, Jan was a super person. She caused me absolutely no problem. Mark used to be the problem one. He was kind of fresh. And then I would say to him, "You're really fresh. You go down to your room and wait until you feel that you can apologize." So he got in the habit of being fresh and going down there and then slamming the door and saying, "I'm sorry." And that's what he kept all the time. Every time he wanted to say that he was going to apologize, he'd slam the door first and then say, "I'm sorry."
He was so had such a great personality always. He could get away with murder with me. And so I don't even know whether Susie remembers all the things she did when she was young. She was so good. She used to get on the bounce beam. She was an expert. And as a matter of fact, when she went to Harvard, she was doing swimming and diving. And the diving teacher gets a hold of Marty and I. He asked to have us come in. We came in, and he said, "Look, she's really good. I mean, I'm talking about Olympic material." And he said, "If she's willing to work on it." So we said to Susie, we explained to her, "Listen, if you want to work on it, that's what he's saying, but it really means working on it because it's not something easy." she said, "No, I'm not willing."
Mm-hmm.
She didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
She said, "I'm going to work on my schoolwork, and I hope I can join a club or something and do it as fun, but that's all. I don't want to compete like that." So she didn't. I think she competed intramurally, but she never went, never did anything more than that. Never had any aspirations to go to. And Marty kept on getting Fulbrights, and so we kept on going to Europe and different places like that. I took the children. I quit my job every time that I could go with Grandpa to any place when he was going to Europe. We lived in the Netherlands and Denmark and France all for a year. Then we lived in Germany where we were by ourselves. We didn't have anybody with us. They were all in school. And so that was for 6 months. And then we were down in Naples for 6 months because Grandpa was teaching at the Naval Academy. Everybody came down to visit us. We had a great house there right on the harbor. And we had a wonderful time. I had so many nice experiences. I just can't remember them all. I never was unhappy. I was always a happy child. I was a happy woman. And people were always good to me, and I guess I was good to them too. And I just enjoyed life, and I had a good sense of humor. I laughed a lot. I was good-natured. I didn't get sick or anything. I was always pretty well.
I had a happy life, Jessalyn. I mean, my happy life with Marty was absolutely perfect. It was like paradise. We never really had a problem. I mean, we used to talk about a lot of things that we didn't agree with. We didn't agree completely in politics, because I was much more liberal than he was, but he was a liberal Democrat, and we also never had problems about money or about bringing up the children. We always agreed about everything, and we never had a fight. We always talked it over, and Aunt Min said to us, "You never go to sleep mad," and we felt that was really true, and I think I told that to my children. You never go to sleep mad. Always find a way to compromise or to work it out, because you don't want to you want to have your sleeping has to be a happy occasion, not a sad one, not a worrisome one. And I think I would tell my grandchildren the same thing, and tell my great-grandchildren the same thing, because I've lived by that. Everything I think was interesting. I love my life. As a matter of fact, I honestly would be happy to live it all over again, just like it was if I had a choice.